It's 9:20, so it's 4:20 somewhere. If you got one, spark up. All right. When will Jesus bring the pork chops? Part 6.
Feminine lubricating solution to recommend. That's the way they describe crotch products now. Even a good old-fashioned douche has turned into a feminine wash. And remember feminine hygiene sprays? Personally, they didn't sound very tasty to me. If they had come in flavors, they might have been more successful. Vaginilla, crotchocolate, labia lime. Just a thought. Anyway, the latest female product I've heard of is protective underwear, which frankly, folks, I don't even want to think about.
Alright, so here's where we left off.
Because I enjoy following the exploits of serial killers, I'm always hoping they never get caught. So I've compiled a list of suggestions to help them stay on the loose longer. That way they can provide me with maximum entertainment. Here's my message to the killers. If you're looking for some form of perverted attention and publicity, I can't help you. But if you just want to kill a lot of people one by one, I'm your guy. Here's how you can maximize the time it will take the police to apprehend you. Make sure your victims are not all the same types. Kill a variety of people. Tall, short, rich, poor, male, female, young, old. But don't kill them in any particular order. Do 2 old men in a row, then do a young woman, then a teenage boy. Mix blondes and brunettes, and long hair and short. Don't bother with prostitutes. Vary the locations where you grab your victims and vary the times of day. Try to do your work in heavily populated areas, where there are more murders to begin with. If at all possible, travel around the country and kill each victim in a different state. Never kill 2 people in the same city within a year. And don't travel in a straight line. Randomness is your greatest ally. Kill each of your victims in a completely different manner. Do some really weird ones, then do some ordinary ones. Sexual, non-sexual, ritual, non-ritual. Don't specialize. Patterns are your enemy. Dispose of the bodies as far from the murder sites as possible, always at least 100 miles. Bury some, burn some, and dissolve others in lime and acid. If you encounter any chance witnesses to any part of the killings or the disposals, they should be killed and disposed of with a minimum of fuss, and be sure to dispose of them separately. When driving to the murder, or especially the disposal sites, be careful not to break the law or have an accident. Use cash for everything. Don't stay in motels. Drive a late model van-type vehicle you can sleep in, and don't park it where the police might be expected to patrol. Have a large food supply and eat in the vehicle. If possible, change vehicles after every murder. Don't write notes to the police or taunt them in any way. It's dumb. Don't save newspaper clippings. Don't even read the newspaper accounts. Don't keep souvenirs from any of the victims. And start watching the CSI shows on CBS and the Law and Order shows on NBC. Every now and then, you'll pick up some piece of information that will help you avoid mistakes. Be smart and stay alive. Some of us are counting on you. The Wall Street Journal reminds you that your job as a businessman is to fuck the other guy before he fucks you. Sometimes you have to do such a complete job of fucking the other guy that he stays fucked for a long time, even to the point of going out of business and losing everything he owns. Quite often, the difference between getting fucked and being the one who does the fucking can be one small piece of business information, such as they're not making steam locomotives anymore, or the Zeppelin travel market has begun to decline. These 2 important business facts appeared recently in the Wall Street Journal. If you're a reptilian lowlife on your way up, stop getting fucked and start doing the fucking. Read the Wall Street Journal. In an earlier book, Brain Droppings, I wrote some things about politically correct language, but I left out a few areas. I neglected 3 important groups of people who have had this awkward, dishonest language inflicted on them by liberals. I omitted those who are crippled, ugly, or stupid. And so, to address these earlier omissions, I'd like to make a brief return visit to that playground of guilty white liberals, political correctness. Political correctness is America's newest form of intolerance, and it's especially pernicious because it comes disguised as tolerance. It presents itself as fairness, yet attempts to restrict and control people's language with strict codes and rigid rules.
Hold up, I gotta check this. Because if I recall correctly, I was told that this came out in 2004, I believe. Yep, 2004. If only George could see where it has gone today. It's, I don't know. It's pretty wild. Just seeing some of the conversations people have. I don't know. Everything's become extremely hyper tribalized lately. I mean, it really picked up after Occupy Wall Street started, which in the beginning, as I've mentioned before, wasn't tribal at all, except it was, just regular people of all political spectrums who got fucked by Wall Street. So while you busy fighting the other side, the system's fucking both of you. Well, let me rephrase. The system's fucking all of us while you fighting with somebody who has no real power. These big corporations you give all your money to, they have the real power. The bullshit politicians that get shuffled in and out, their power is next to limited. Obama ran on ending 2 wars, started 5 new ones. Trump ran on getting out of the wars, all of them. He didn't start no new ones, not without attempt. Assassinating Soleimani, that could have definitely started a war. A couple cool attempts in Venezuela. So he got lucky that he didn't start a new one. And he withdrew some troops. However, those troops got replaced by mercenaries. The point of getting out is getting out, not bringing in the troops, the taxpayer-paid troops, and then paying higher salaries for mercenaries. Like, that's get the fuck out, But I've kind of gone off. Let's get back to it.
Rules. I'm not sure that's the way to fight discrimination. I'm not sure silencing people or forcing them to alter their speech is the best method for solving problems that go much deeper than speech. Therefore, those among you who are more politically sensitive than the rest of us may wish to take a moment here to tighten up those sphincter muscles, because I'm going to inject a little realism into the dream world of politically correct speech, especially the words we use to describe one another. Perhaps you've noticed that when the politically correct liberal rule makers decide to rename a group of humans they view as victims, they begin by imparting a sense of shame to the group's existing name. And so somewhere over the years the word cripple has been discarded. No one mentions cripples anymore. That's because in yet another stunning attempt to stand reality on its head, cripples have been assigned a new designation, the physically challenged. The use of physically challenged is an obvious attempt to make people feel better. The idea being, As long as we can't cure these people, let's give their condition a more positive name and maybe it'll distract everyone. It's verbal sleight of hand. The same is true of the ungainly phrase, differently abled. I believe that if a person is going to insist on using tortured language, such as differently abled, then he should be forced to use it to describe everyone. We're all differently abled. You can do things I can't do. I can do things you can't do. Barry Bonds can't play the cello. Yo-Yo Ma can't hit the curveball. They're differently abled. It should be explained to liberals, patiently, that crippled people don't require some heroic designation. It's a perfectly honorable condition. It appears in the Bible. Jesus healed the cripples. He didn't engage in rehabilitative strategies to improve the conditions of the physically disadvantaged. Can't these liberals hear how unattractive this language is? How poorly it sits on the ear? Personally, I prefer plain, descriptive language. For instance, and this is a suggestion that will bother some people, but I'm serious about it. Why don't we just call handicapped people defective? You know? We don't mind talking about birth defects. We don't flinch from that. We say Gunther has a birth defect. Isn't that a concession to the fact that people can be defective? Then what would be wrong with calling those people the physically defective? At what point in life does a person with a birth defect become a person who is differently abled? And why does it happen? I'm confused. Then there are those who don't quite measure up to society's accepted standards of physical attractiveness. The worst of that group are called ugly, or at least they used to be. The PC lingo cops have been working on this too. And to demonstrate how far all this politically correct, evasive language has gone, some psychologists are actually now referring to ugly people as those with severe appearance deficits. Okay? Severe appearance deficits. So tell me, psychologist, how well does that sort of language qualify for being in denial? These allegedly well-intentioned people have strayed so far from reality that it will not be a surprise for me to someday hear a rape victim referred to as an unwilling sperm recipient. Back to ugly. Regarding people's appearance, the political language police already have in place one comically distorted term, lookism. They say that when you judge a person, or rather size them up, wouldn't want to judge someone, that would be judgmental. If you take their looks into account, you're guilty of lookism. You're a lookist. And those valiant people who fight lookism, many of them unattractive themselves, tell us that one problem is that in our society, those who get to be called beautiful and those who are called ugly are determined by standards arbitrarily set by us. Somehow there's some fault attached to the idea that we, the people, are the ones who set the standards of beauty. But we're the ones who have to look at one another. So why shouldn't we be the ones who set the standards? I'm confused. I would say the whole thing was stupid, but that's my next topic, and it would sound like a cheap transition. So, stupid. It's important to face one thing about stupidity. We can't get away from it. It's all around us. It doesn't take a team of professional investigators to discover that there are stupid people in the world. Their presence and its effects speaks for itself. But where do these stupid people come from? Well, they come from American schools. But while they're attending these schools, they're never identified as stupid. That comes later, when they grow up. When they're kids, you can't call them stupid, which may be contributing to the problem. Unfortunately, kids, stupid or otherwise, come under a sort of protective umbrella we've established that prevents them from being exposed to the real world until at 18 their parents spring them on the rest of us, full grown. There are stupid kids. And I do wish to be careful how I negotiate the minefield of the learning disabled and the developmentally disadvantaged. In other words, those with special needs. All of these being more examples of this tiresome and ridiculous language. I just want to talk about kids who are stupid, not the ones with dings. One of the terms now used to describe these stupid kids is minimally exceptional. Can you handle that? Minimally exceptional. Whatever happened to the old reliable explanation, the boy is slow? Was that so bad? Really? The boy is slow. Some of the other children are quick. They think quickly. Not this boy. He's slow. It seems humane enough to me, but no. He's minimally exceptional. How would you like to be told that about your child? He's minimally exceptional. Oh, thank God for that. We thought he was just kind of, I don't know, slow. But minimally exceptional, wow. Wait till I tell our friends. Political correctness cripples discourse, creates ugly language, and is generally stupid. I haven't quite finished this section. I'm sure I needn't remind you PC people that the opera isn't concluded until the full-figured woman offers her vocal rendering. I know, I really had to strain to get that in. I'm thoroughly ashamed. But before I leave this section, I wanted to make the point that on a practical level, this language renders completely useless at least one perfectly good expression. In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king becomes, in the kingdom of the visually impaired, the partially sighted person is fully empowered. Sad, isn't it? I've noticed that when people speak these days, location seems important to them. And one location in particular, there. They say such things as, don't go there, been there, done that, and you were never there for me. They don't say much about here. If they do mention here, they usually say, I'm out of here, which is really an indirect way of mentioning there, because if they're out of here, then they must be going there, even though they were specifically warned not to. It seems to me that here and there present an important problem because when you get right down to it, those are the only two places we have, which of course is really neither here nor there. So, let's first talk about don't go there. As we all know, painfully by now, when you mention something someone thinks you shouldn't go into any further, they say, don't go there. What they fail to realize, of course, is that technically, by the time they've told you not to go there, it's too late. You're already there, because you've already mentioned whatever it is they're uncomfortable with. At a time like that, what they should be saying is, don't stay there. Or, at the very least, please hurry back. Sort of like, wish you were here. The only time I would tell someone don't go there is if they told me they were planning a trip to Iraq. If someone said, we're going on our honeymoon to Fallujah, I would immediately say, don't go there. By the way, when one of those TV newsmen on MSNBC recently tried to get his co-anchor lady to react to some juicy celebrity rumor, she said to him, I am so not going there. And I thought, why am I allowing a person like this to bring me the news? Another phrase I don't care for is been there, done that. I personally am not so cocky. I prefer the modest approach. Instead of been there, done that, I would usually say, been nearby, done something similar. And by the way, most people don't seem to know the complete expression. I heard Drew Barrymore say it on The Tonight Show. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. It's a little smarter, and it hasn't been overused yet. Staying with this subject of location, when someone is ending a long-term relationship, quite often they'll tell the other party, you were never there for me. Here again, what they may be forgetting is that possibly at some time in the past, they had told that very same person, don't go there. So how can they blame the person for not being there when they themselves had issued specific instructions not to go there in the first place? It seems unfair. Additionally, many people who are ending relationships use another bothersome phrase, moving on. They'll say, I found Steve in bed with a carnival worker and they were doing unpleasant things to a chipmunk, so I'm moving on. And I think to myself, actually, Steve sounds more like the one who's moving on. Or they might say, I'm leaving Armando. He beat me up yesterday in the frozen food section of the supermarket. He struck me in the head repeatedly with a Stouffer's lean cuisine. I believe it was the chicken cordon bleu. I'm moving on. Occasionally I get impatient with these people. When they tell me they're moving on, I look at my watch and say, well, isn't it about time you got started? No sense standing around here talking to me when you could be out there moving on. I don't know. I guess it all works out because when I run into the same person a few months later, they usually say, I'm in a whole different place now. And I don't think they're referring to Pittsburgh. And by the way, speaking of geographic locations, why is San Francisco always said to be in the Bay Area while Saudi Arabia is in the Gulf region? Is a region really bigger than an area? And what about a belt? How big is a belt? The Bible Belt is bigger than the Borscht Belt. Maybe that's because there are more Christians than Jews. But that doesn't explain the Rust Belt. In the last several decades, a good deal of the U.S. population has moved from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt. People changed belts. By the way, part of the Sun Belt runs right through the Bible Belt. That must be confusing. And let's not forget zones, especially war zones. The media like that phrase. If there's any kind of explosion at all, even a small gas heater, they'll say the living room looked like a war zone. Most of the time it's an overstatement, because when you get right down to it, the only thing that looks like a war zone is a combat area. Then there's the opposite of a war zone, a demilitarized zone. Korea has one of those, separating the North and South. A demilitarized zone sounds like a good idea, but I've noticed that wherever they have a demilitarized zone, there are always a lot of soldiers nearby. I guess that's in case the demilitarized zone suddenly becomes a combat area. Now, the Gulf region has been both a war zone and a combat area. That's because there were some countries who wanted to expand their spheres of influence, and also because of the big oil companies, who of course are in the private sector. The private sector is quite different from the public arena. Dick Cheney was in the private sector, then he moved to the public arena, although many of his acts in the public arena have benefited his interests in the private sector. Getting back a little closer to my own experience, on a recent visit to my hometown, New York City, I was walking through the area that we used to call the Garment District. I noticed that the local trade association now wanted people to call it the Fashion Center. Not everyone wanted that, just the ones who would like to raise the rents. Fashion Center is another example of how desperately people feel the need to upgrade themselves. They just want to feel better. They want to expand their comfort zones. Your comfort zone is not the same as your zone of privacy, by the way. A few years ago, when the press was hounding Congressman Gary Condit about Chandra Levy's disappearance, he asked them to please grant him a zone of privacy. But of course they couldn't do that, because Gary Condit was in the public arena. And as I wind up our little journey through location land, I regret not getting to one other place. Where? And if you wonder where I'm going with this, it's because you don't know where I'm coming from. Or maybe you simply don't know where it's at. Either way, I'm leaving now. I need my space. When people...
I think that's a good spot. Some of that I've heard. Some of it I hadn't. Hearing some of this stuff really makes me wish he was alive today. He would definitely have plenty of material to work with. But yeah, so that was part 6. I'll probably do part 7 unless I get a request for something. I'll probably get to part 7 in the next couple days. Wasn't feeling too good last night, and yeah. Other than that, link to my political and my 420 merch will be in the description. Thanks for watching. Have a nice night. Stay blazing.